To this day, trains that were built during the Soviet Union era still run all across the former Soviet Union. We had the luck, not really of course, to end up on one of these old Soviet trains. And today I'll show you a real compartment car manufactured in the German Democratic Republic, back when socialist countries helped each other build equipment for a common future. This is a typical Soviet compartment car. Thousands like this crossed the country from the Baltic Sea to the Far East. The narrow corridor, the train's lifeline, always had someone passing through. GDR manufactured cars featured a higher level of comfort compared to domestic ones of that time. They included comfortable sleeping berths, improved heating and ventilation systems, which made them especially sought after for long-distance trains. Several types of cars were supplied to the USSR from the GDR. Compartment cars, four-person compartments with soft berths, doors for privacy, and modern amenities. Restaurant cars. Cars from the GDR were used on prestigious routes, such as the Red Arrow, as well as on international lines. They were also actively used on Trans-Siberian routes and other long-distance trains throughout the USSR. German cars were distinguished by high reliability and durability. They could be operated for decades while staying in good condition. The materials and construction used ensured strength and resistance to harsh climatic conditions, typical of the USSR. The Soviet train toilet. Legendary, simple, metal, without frills, but functional. A sink with a pedal, mirror, iron water tank, and the sign everyone knew. Do not use when train is stopped. Why? Because everything that was flushed went straight onto the tracks. The smells here mixed with the smell of iron and steam. And in winter, the toilet was very cold. In summer, stuffy. But all this was part of the journey. Of course, in modern times, it's hard to imagine toilets like these, but in Soviet cars it was exactly like this. Usually this toilet was the only one for the entire car, and getting into it was quite an adventure, especially before you needed to exit at your arrival station. The last compartment located near this toilet was the most undesirable, since the ventilation wasn't the best and the partitions were thin. Well, just imagine what smells reached that compartment. And here it is, the vestibule, a special place in the car. Between cars, there's a rubber accordion, a corrugated coupling that people crossed carefully, gripping the handrail. The USSR used a lot of passenger cars made in the GDR. These cars came from factories like the Görlitz railway carriage factory, which was known for quality long-distance passenger cars. Cooperation between the USSR and GDR on railway transport was part of the Warsaw Pact's economic partnership. This car is not a museum replica, but an authentic witness of the era. Everything here is as it was then. The corridor with narrow windows, metal handles, old signs, and of course, the legendary Titan. No train could do without it. Without it, there would be no boiling water, no tea in a glass holder, no that unique smell of coal, iron, and hot water. The Titan was stoked manually, most often with wood or coal. At the bottom was an ash pan, on top a water tank. The conductor would light it at the station, and soon the entire car would fill with warm steam. In a Soviet train, nothing worked without the Titan. Boiling water was needed for tea, for washing up, and sometimes to warm yourself. I found a book by the famous writer Jules Verne called The Children of Captain Grant. And this book simply turned my world upside down. I was just a small child then, and it seemed to me that besides the Soviet Union, we didn't even think about the fact that there were other countries. And when I saw this heroic act of children who went to search for their missing father, Patagonia, other countries, This was simply incredible to me. I just flew into this book. And on one ordinary day, I needed to pick up my little sister at 6 p.m. from kindergarten. But I got absorbed in reading and came to only at 7 p.m. And I remember how I ran to the kindergarten, ran in, saw my little sister sitting next to the guard. I understood that I was about to really get it. My mom beat me, let's be honest. But the most important thing was that Mom forbade me from reading for exactly 1 month, and this book she simply took away from me. All night, I practically didn't sleep. I was hatching a plan. I came to the conclusion that I urgently needed to visit the sea. I urgently needed to accomplish some heroic deed. I put on my warm ski suit, put on my coat. I took fish crackers and stuffed my pockets full with them. I had 30 kopecks. That was all my money. And a bus ride then cost 5 kopecks, and I figured the money would definitely be enough. And so I went to the bus stop, waited for the bus, as I remember now. This kind of bus pulled up with railway station written on it. It was to this very station that I arrived then, just a little kid. When I saw this building, it seemed to me that it was simply magical. I thought, that's it, now I'll definitely go to the sea. Right about here somewhere, a passenger train pulled up. I then saw a woman with children. I don't remember whether she had 2 or 3 children, and I stood near her. The train was approaching, you see here. The tracks are very low, and the train was much higher. A conductor was standing at the top. She was yelling, "Come on, hurry, hurry, hurry!" And people rushed forward. She was just tearing these tickets like this. And I ran into the train together with this woman. And children weren't even counted then, because children rode trains for free. So calmly I got on the train with these children at last. My dream, you could say, had almost, as I thought, already come true. I was going to the sea. Back then there were still what they called common cars. They had bench seating instead of sleeping berths. Where a regular sleeper car had 1 berth, the common car had 3 seats in a row. These common cars were always packed because they were the cheapest tickets you could get. And that's exactly the kind of car I ended up in. There were a lot of people. No one paid attention to me. Naturally, since there were no empty seats, I didn't know what to do. I walked in one direction, in another direction. I went out to the vestibule. This was the smoking area. It was terribly dirty there. It smelled terrible. Men and women went out there taking turns, smoked, came in, and there were always a lot of people there. Apparently, one of the people who was smoking noticed a girl, a small child, very strange, very frozen. And they apparently told the conductor about it. I remember this woman, such a large woman in uniform, in just this kind of conductor's uniform. And for us in Soviet times, any person in uniform, especially for a child, this was something frightening. She came out of the car right into this vestibule area, looked at me and said, "Well, looks like we have a runaway. Who are you? Whose are you?" I said, "I'm nobody's. I'm going to the sea." She took me to her conductor's compartment, gave me tea to drink. But in any case, they took me off the train. They brought me to the police at the station. This was my first time being in the police station. They also fed me there. Then they sat me down. Eventually, they were taking me somewhere by car. There was this little bench at the police station, and I slept on it. And I remember that I opened my eyes, and my dad was standing there. My wonderful dad. But my story didn't end there. I barely remember whether they punished me then or not. I don't think they punished me. If they had punished me, I probably would have remembered. But Dad returned the book to me. They let me read. But Dad, maybe because he understood me, or there was another reason, in any case, in June, well, in summer, he took us to the sea, our whole family. And from this very station, we boarded a train to go to the sea. And, you know, in this book there was an illustration. I remembered it very well. It depicted the stern of a ship. And at the stern stood Robert Grant, the son of Captain Grant. And he was depicted like this. And you could tell from the drawing that the sea was hitting him right in the face. And he had such a heroic pose. And I remember that they put me on the second berth in the train. It was summer, hot weather. This window was open. I stuck my face out like this. The train was moving, the cars clattering away, and I put my face toward this wind in that same pose. True. When I climbed down from that berth, Mom and Dad were simply horrified, because my whole face was covered in soot. It was black. But I was very happy then.